Mr. Beat presents Supreme Court Briefs.
Westminster, Maryland, March 10th, 2006. Family and friends attend the funeral of Matthew Snyder at St. John's Catholic Church. Snyder, a soldier for the United States Marine Corps, had died in the Iraq War a week earlier. Snyder's father, Albert Snyder, had announced the funeral to the public in local newspapers the day before. As Snyder's family and friends arrived for the funeral, Fred Phelps, the leader of the Westboro Baptist Church, and 6 of his relatives and fellow church members protested the funeral approximately 1,000 feet from the church. Now, they were on public land, but held up signs that said some really horrible and hateful things, man. Like that. As the family and friends of Matthew Snyder arrived to the funeral, some of them, understandably, were quite offended by these protests. If you already know about the Westboro Baptist Church, these hateful protests shouldn't be surprising. Unfortunately, I am all too familiar with the group, as they are headquartered close to where I live, in the city I was born in, Topeka, Kansas. I have come across their protests at least a dozen times throughout my life. If you don't know who the Westboro Baptist Church is, it's a small, unaffiliated, primitive Baptist church founded in 1955 by Fred Phelps, who died back in 2014, by the way. Today, there are likely less than 70 members of the church, but they get a lot of media attention, despite their small numbers, by provocatively protesting events, mostly to bring attention to their anti-Semitic, Islamophobic, and anti-LGBT+ views. During the Iraq War, they routinely protested the funerals of dead American soldiers with the simple purpose of spreading their hateful views. In fact, on the day of Matthew Snyder's funeral, Phelps and his relatives protested at 2 other locations with the same signs. Anyway, Albert Snyder was understandably upset that the Westboro Baptist Church had protested his son's funeral. After seeing them get more media coverage for the protest, he became angry at them. After seeing the Westboro Baptist Church website specifically talking trash about Albert's wife and Matthew's mother, Julie Snyder, for raising their son Catholic, saying that they, quote, taught Matthew to defy his creator and, quote, raised him for the devil, he became even more angry at them. In the U.S. District Court for the District of Maryland, Albert decided to sue Fred Phelps and his 2 daughters, Rebecca Phelps Davis and Shirley Phelps Roper, for civil conspiracy, defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, intrusion upon seclusion, and publicity given to private life. The U.S. District Court for the District of Maryland dismissed the defamation charge, since it was based on the Westboro Baptist Church posting stuff on their website, and it also dismissed the publicity given to the private life charge, since the funeral was already made public by Albert Snyder, as he had announced it in local newspapers. However, the District Court considered the rest of the charges. In the trial, Albert Snyder testified, "The Westboro Baptist Church turned this funeral into a media circus, and they wanted to hurt my family. They wanted their message heard, and they didn't care who they stepped over. My son should have been buried with dignity, not with a bunch of clowns outside." Snyder also argued that the protests of the Phelps family had literally caused his health to decline. Shirley Phelps Roper, a trained lawyer who had been working for the Phelps family's law firm for years, represented them in court. She argued that they had complied with local ordinances and obeyed the instructions of the local police. Not only that, Phelps Roper argued that they had been peaceful and did not shout at the funeral attendees. Therefore, their protests were protected under the First Amendment of the Constitution. Regardless, on October 31st, 2007, the jury announced it had sided with Snyder and ultimately awarded him $10.9 million in damages, $15.8 million in today's money. The judge, Richard Bennett later reduced those damages to $5 million, $7.3 million in today's money, and said that if Phelps couldn't afford to pay those damages, the government would seize their church buildings in Topeka. Not only did the Phelps appeal to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit, but they announced that they would continue to protest military funerals. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit sided with the Phelps, reversing the lower court's jury decision. It argued that the First Amendment indeed protected their protests and even ordered Albert Snyder to pay the court costs of the Phelps. The national media heavily covered this verdict, and it caused Americans across the country to become outraged. Bill O'Reilly, who was a prominent political pundit on Fox News at the time, even pledged to cover all current and future court costs of Snyder. Snyder appealed to the Supreme Court, which agreed to hear the case on March 8, 2010. Multiple media and civil rights organizations joined forces to support the Phelps, including the American Civil Liberties Union and National Public Radio. Multiple veterans groups, as well as 42 members of the United States Senate, joined forces to support Snyder. This case got more national media attention than most Supreme Court cases do, likely due to the notoriety of the Westboro Baptist Church, who Americans almost unilaterally despised and continue to despise. The court heard oral arguments on October 6, 2010. The big question in this case: does the First Amendment protect protesters at a funeral from liability for creating emotional distress on the family of the deceased? The court said yes. On March 2, 2011, it announced it had sided with Phelps. It was surprisingly a lopsided decision, 8-1. Only Justice Samuel Alito sided with Snyder. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote the majority opinion, writing, quote, "What Westboro said, in the whole context of how and where it chose to say it, is entitled to special protection under the First Amendment, and that protection cannot be overcome by a jury finding that the picketing, protesting, was outrageous." Roberts said that the First Amendment indeed protects the Westboro Baptist Church from being sued for protesting because it didn't disrupt the funeral, was on public land, and was dealt with, quote, "matters of public concern." Public concern just means it's highly relevant to the community's values or interests. Snyder v. Phelps reaffirmed the principle that even if speech is ridiculously offensive and unpopular, it's still protected by the First Amendment. In other words, the government can't restrict speech simply because it's extremely distasteful or causes emotional harm. As long as you protest peacefully on public land, you can pretty much say the most outrageous things imaginable. Indeed, the Phelps still regularly do this. I'll see you for the next Supreme Court case, jury. The First Amendment is so precious. It gives everyone a voice. But when everyone has a voice, that can also lead to misinformation easily spreading about, clear political bias, and emotionally charged clickbait. Well, I still have hope for the future because this video is sponsored in part by Ground News, a website and news app that is meant to help you get better at media literacy, developed by a former NASA engineer, for goodness sake. All right, so check this out. We've got a story about Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, and oh, look at that. The right end of the political spectrum is mostly focusing on it. My favorite part is the blind spot feed, which features stories that are underreported from either side of the political spectrum. I appreciate this because it quickly reveals echo chambers. Ground News has definitely helped me become more media literate, and it can help you too. If you use my link in the description, you'll get 30% off their Vantage subscription. So visit the link in the description and help support an independent news platform, helping to make the media landscape more transparent. If you're wondering where the heck I am right now, I'm in Topeka, Kansas, in front of the Westboro Baptist Church. And if you know anything about me, you know that I love to troll hate. And what better way to troll hate than buy up properties across the street from the Westboro Baptist Church and convert them into centers of support for the LGBT+ community. Right here we have the Equality House, painted with bright rainbow colors to support the LGBT plus community. And next door is the Mott House, a building that is a symbol of hope and support for the transgender community. If you're ever in Topeka, I highly recommend you check both of these places out, not so much across the street. So, which Supreme Court case should I cover next for this series? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching. Now I better get out of here before one of the Phelps see me.